Good day to all of you. I welcome you today to the last lot of our refresher course, Geography, Geographers and Geospatial Technologies. I am so honored today that today we have among us such senior emeritus professor who also had a chance of interacting with Professor R.B. Singh. He's among us today. Dr. Yukio Himama. He is from Hokkaido University of Education, Japan. Thank you, sir. I know you were so busy, and despite your busy schedule, you had taken time for my 258 participants. On behalf of organizers, participants, and each one of us who is linked with this course, welcome you. And second speaker for today is my friend, Dr. Şirin Gülcen from Turkey, who I met in Japan when I went 2 years back to participate in International Cartographic Association conference. And we had been in touch and we are working together. I welcome you, Şirin. Today we are going to listen to them on a topic which I think so in this particular decade, it's there in our mind. Which word am I talking about? I know, dear students, that now each one of you recognize that word that starts from S. Sustainability. Agenda 2030. Implementation decade of all 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And that is something like, which is so very important. Yukio Himama is an emeritus professor, and his initial degree was from physics department, his graduation, his MPhil, and then in geography department, King's College London, he did his PhD. And he's been teaching since 1980. He's also a visiting professor, Research Institute for Humanity and Nature. And as I shared with you, he's one of that professor who is known to everyone in IGU. Look at the number of committees that he's part of. He's chair IHDP committee, council member of Science Council of Japan, chair Human Geoscience Committee, president Human Geoscience Section, Japan Geoscience Union, chair managing committee, Ashwa City Community Center, chair education for sustainable committee, president Japan Organization of Geographical Science, auditor Japan Geoscience Union, president International Geographical Union. So from 2016 onwards, the president International Geographical Union. Advisor Society for Environmental Map Education, member Science Council of Japan. Why I'm showing you all this? Because just remember, each one of you also have to keep in mind that yes, agree, you would be teaching your students with a timetable given to you, but at the same time, you have to be involved in a number of other committees too. And that is something so very important, so that we start on with a networking. You remember my secret mantras? And today, Yukio Himama professor is going to talk about Ashikawa Environmental Map Contest and G-Local Environmental Education. He's taking that idea of neighborhood mapping, neighborhood finding spaces, where you can make a difference, where you can sensitize people. And that's something he especially put his content together for this particular refresher course. And I'm so grateful to you, sir. He's going to talk today about International Symposium on Environmental Change and GIS, 91. He's also going to talk about Achakova Environmental Map Contest. And the reason why he's placed them there, because Professor R.B. Singh was involved in them too. Then he's also going to talk about International Symposium on Go Local Environmental Education. And then he also, tells us on significance of Professor Singh's paper. And further, he sets the agenda in a more clearer framework on International Action Framework for Sustainable Development. We welcome you, sir, and we are very honored that you are among us, and you're showing us that how important even a local event with school children, with college students, become of a national relevance, and how we can sensitize our people. Next, of course, is Şirin. She is from Süleyman Demirel University, Faculty of Architecture, Department of City and Regional Planning, Turkey. She's head of Regional Planning Science field. And welcome, Şirin. And she graduated from Metro City and Regional Planning Department in 91 with a bachelor's degree, and in 95 with a master's degree. She received her PhD from Metu Institute of Science and Technology City and Regional Planning Program in 2007, and her doctoral thesis was awarded the Seret Ozio Young Scientist of the Year 2008 award. And I can tell you with conviction that she's so active and enthusiastic in involving herself in number of tasks, and she enjoys mapping. And plus she's got a flavor, of interacting with different offices. She worked at the General Directorate of Technical Research and Implementation of the Ministry of Public Works and Settlement. EREN also worked in the temporary and permanent settlement work after 1999 East Marmara earthquake. Between 2000 and 2006, she worked as a general coordinator of earthquake reconstruction, foreign loans and grants, and between 2003-06 as a branch manager of international institutions. So between 2006 and 2009, she worked at the Crisis Center of the General Directorate of Disaster Affairs of the same ministry. And from November 2009 until the establishment of the Ministry of Environment and Urbanization, she served as a branch manager at the Vocational Qualification Department of the abolished TAU General Directorate. So, I mean, she also has an exposure to number of places. And also, her research interests are also diverse, but focused. Her interests are in basic design, urban design, sustainability, urban planning, ancient land cadastre and cartography, geostamps, and ancient spatial networks. So I welcome you. I welcome you, Şirin, in all the capacity. And today you're going to speak on sustainability and sustainable development. We're also going to speak on how pandemic has demonstrated the importance of sustainable development goals, national action framework, and international cooperation. And that's something what I want you all, each and every participant in this implementation decade, pick up one or the other goal. By now, I know that you have engraved in yourself and I'm embedded in your thinking that geography is an integrative science, which has a content and context, locational in mind. And in case if you learn how to tweak it, and if you learn to use it with the help of geospatial tools and technologies and your mapping equipment, you can go places. Today, there is a mismatch between supply and demand. Demand is there, but we geographers have to equip ourselves to fulfill that demand. And then in the end, she's also going to talk about urban sustainability. And especially in our country, also this is very important because we are getting now smart cities in place. Our infrastructure is expanding in cities. And so sustainability out here is very important. So I welcome you all, and I hope that you all would definitely listen to this lecture with all enthusiasm. And by now, you all know me. I'm Seema Mehra Parihar, your convener of the course. I wish you all luck. We'll be meeting now in the valedictory section. And I definitely would like to tell you that we'll have such exercises in the days to come too. But at the same time, just promise me that you all would join hands to take geography, geographers, and geospatial technologies forward. Welcome, Professor Yukio Himama and Dr. Şirin, and my dear participants. This is something like, I am feeling so much at loss. I don't know how these 15 days passed with so many resource persons from international community. Welcome once again to lectures, and I'm sure you will enjoy them.
Hello, everyone. I'm Yukio Himiyama, Emeritus Professor of Hokkaido University of Education. Let me start my lecture on the Asahikawa Environmental Map Contest and Global Environmental Education. It consists of 5 parts, each one about 15 to 20 minutes. The first part is on International Symposium on Environmental Change and GIS, INSEG 91 in short. I draw your attention to this symposium because this is a place where the Asahikawa Environmental Map Contest was born. The picture you see now is the entrance of the conference hall in Asahikawa City. Asahikawa is the second largest city in Hokkaido Island in Japan. And the symposium took place in August 1991. Remember that 1991 is the year before Rio Summit. Rio Summit took place in 1992. So this symposium is 1 year before that. There were some 300 participants, about 1/3 from abroad. There were 17 Indian participants. As you see, one of them, Professor R.B. Singh. It's 30 years ago, so he was around 36 or 7 years old, still very young. But he was an important speaker in that symposium. In one of the photographs, you see the Asahikawa City Hall, and you can see the banner hanging on the wall of the City Hall. That symposium was, as far as I know, the biggest international gathering for sustainability taking place in Japan at that time. After this symposium, there were many important sustainability conferences and meetings in Japan, but this one was really the first big one. The title of the symposium was the International Symposium on Environmental Change and GIS. And the Ministry of Postal Services decided to make a commemorative stamp for this symposium. So it's shown on the screen now. As you can see, there are two maps, one very old map and another one more recent digital map. Both show Hokkaido Island, and on the stamp, the digital map was made by grid. 20 kilometer grid was used to make this map. The original map is this: land use in Japan circa 1985. Remember, the symposium was held in 1991, so that's the most up-to-date land use map of Japan at the time. And the map was made by myself and my students, with many people helping us. And this is one of the main products of a big project called Environmental Change and GIS. It's a $1 million project at that time, about $4 million or so was spent for that project, and about 140 people were involved. And this is one of the maps which is very important. To make this map, about 1,000 to 300 maps, topo maps, were used. And this is the same kind of map, but it's the time is about 1900. So those maps, as well as the many other maps, were used for the discussion of environmental change of Japan. They are the land use maps, but they are really the basis of the discussion about environmental changes in Japan. But anyway, that's the project, the product of that project. And that big project decided to hold the INSEG 91. And I was in charge of coordinating that here in Asahikawa. The environmental map contest was one of the side events of this symposium. The organizers, including myself, thought that symposium may be just one time. But we wanted to leave something which continues after the symposium. So we thought that the map contest could be a very good way to keep our effort running. Now, particularly for education, in the long term, it's very important. So that's why we started environmental map contest. Actually, the database of land use changes in Japan, you can see on the website of Center for Global Environmental Research of Japan. It belongs to National Institute for Environmental Studies, located in Tsukuba City in Japan. And if you visit the website, I must apologize. It's really written in Japanese, and there are very little English indeed. But I think you can get some image idea of what it is. And my data is now put in that database. But for some reasons, the use is restricted. And the language also is a barrier to the people outside Japan. I am very sorry for that, but Japan is not well prepared to make those data completely open. I tried to do it so, but there were some problems and I had to give it up. So in a limited form, the data is available. You can see many maps if you register with the Grid Tsukuba. Grid Tsukuba is in charge of taking care of this database. Anyway, please do visit this and you'll get something. Okay. Professor Şirin presented a paper entitled Remote Sensing Database and GIS Projects for Monitoring National Environmental Change in India. And you are seeing the introduction part of his paper. Actually, it is on the proceedings of the symposium. As you see on the right, and it is in it was published and printed by INSEL 91 Hokkaido University of Education at Asahikawa, Japan. Actually, I'm in charge of the publication there. And I have a few copies still. So if somebody is interested in, it's possible to get them. But anyway, I think Professor Singh keeps those volumes. There are 2 volumes at home or in the institute. But anyway, I sent books to him 30 years ago, a long time ago. Let me read the opening part of his contribution. The geographical environment is not only indispensable, but is also one of the basic parameters of man's economic development. Due to rapid increase in the world's population and poverty level and accelerating rate of natural resources exploitation, the result is manifested in the deteriorating condition of the environment. The basic task we encounter today is to effectively manage our environment so as to increase its sustainability and cope up with the ever-increasing population. To adapt an environmental management strategy, it is thus very pertinent to have a very validated database to monitor and predict complex environmental events. A reliable and comprehensive build-up of geographical information system is a means towards achieving a sustainable and less polluted environment, as in the case of India, which faces complex multitudinal environmental problems. Sorry, I can't spend much time for this. You can revisit this part, I believe. Let me go to the next page. So altogether, there are several pages, and the last part is copied here again. And in between the two copies, there are those sections which are typewritten here. Now, I read part of introduction. The next section is need for database and environmental information systems. And 3, institutional framework of environmental database. And 4, remote sensing technology in India. Major remote sensing and GIS projects. And Professor Sin showed 10 cases, such as National Natural Resource Management System, NRRMS, monitoring Himalayan environment, drought monitoring, land use land cover mapping project of agroclimatic zones, and so on. And concluding remarks are shown below. Here I want to mention that land use land cover mapping project, the term land use land cover mapping project is very informative. As I said, this symposium was held in 1991. And in 1996, which is 5 years later, IGU started a commission on land use land cover change, which was 1 year after IGBP HDP joint project of land use land cover change. Before that IGBP HDP project, the term land use land cover change was not very common. But surprisingly, Professor Sin used the term land use / land cover. It's very informative. And it suggests that his interest on land use land cover was kind of echoed by IGBP, HDP joint project land use land cover change. I mentioned that later in my lecture. Now, let's see concluding remarks. The increased potentialities of remote sensing techniques in India have demonstrated new ways for environmental analysis and monitoring. The satellite images are reliable, unbiased, and time-saving. At present, remote sensing techniques have revolutionized the generation of environmental inventory with several positive factors, which is more useful than the conventional sources of data generation. However, there are still several drawbacks in its techniques, leaving aside the technical aspect for the scientists and engineers. The applied field of remote sensing can look for several avenues still unexplored and be complementary to the ground survey for a comprehensive monitoring and more reliable forecasting. GIS technology is emerging as a powerful tool for integrating different level Earth observations in the field of environmental studies and natural resource management. So, questions. Question 1, why and how was the Asahikawa environmental map contest started? Question 2, what did you learn from Professor Sin's lecture? Okay, this is the end of part 1. Now, part 2, Asahikawa environmental map contest. This is a poster of this year's environmental map contest. The exhibition of the award-winning maps was held late in October. You can see 9 maps from last year's award-winning maps. But it is very small here, and actually the actual poster is quite large and printed on paper. And if you ask me, I'm happy to send the posters for next year's competition. Probably it will be already in May next year, I suppose. I also have a lot of back numbers. Also, if you're interested in, it's possible to send. Although the postal service is not very easy these days because of COVID and so on. But anyway, they're available. And also you can see them on the website of which I will show from now. Few minutes later, I will show it. Here, I want to draw your attention to this map. Okay, it's a very small, too small, so I enlarge it. So how does it look like? This, and then further up, like this. This is the one of 2 best maps of last year. It got award by the director of Geospatial Information Authority of Japan. That's the highest award of environmental map contest. The title, sorry, it's written in Japanese, but the poster has the English title here and also the comments on this map. The title is Disaster Risk Reduction. Sorry, Disaster Risk Prediction based on the ground information. Ground Evaluation Support Map in Kokubunji. Kokubunji is a city near Tokyo. And it was made by Misa Ejima, second-year junior high school student. I think 13 years old at the time. So her concern was the safety from the disaster. And the comment at the bottom of this page says, this is a work of a junior high school student who won the award for the 2nd consecutive year. She says that she'll review the award-winning works of this map contest for the last 10 years based on a map published by Geospatial Information Authority of Japan. She also discovered some artificial landform modification, which is difficult to identify in her daily life. So this map contest is international, and consequently, the poster has English in it. Sorry, the figures are a little bit small. And if you focus on this map, you can see there are some diagrams showing the safety. And there are 5 indices. And they are listed here, actually. And in order to see it, we need more detail. This blue color shows safety, safeness. Red color is danger. Yellow color is in between. And this student, a girl student, made 120 checkpoints. They are between 50 to 100 meters separate from the next one. And she checked those 120 points. And she used the various information about disaster safety issued by the Geospatial Survey Institute. There are various databases which are available. With those data, she visited those places, walked around on foot, and checked and interviewed the local people. In that way, in this map contest, we organize, emphasize the importance of walking around, observe by oneself, and then make the maps. I will show the more detail of those instructions. Before going to that detail, I show another example. This is a very beautiful map indeed. Its title is My Flower Road by Emily Tate, first year junior high school student, Asahikawa, Japan. The map got the prize in 2006. This is so some years back, but I am fond of this map. It's a typical global, local kind of map. At the local level, you can see the street gardens. And the street is shown here. This street is named Flower Road. Incidentally, my house is not far from this Flower Road. It's about 10-15 minutes walk. So I'm familiar to this area by accident. But yes, it is a really beautiful street. And her house is facing this street. By the way, she is now graduated from university, and she is now a dentist, and not geographer, but she is now a dentist working in Sapporo. But anyway, this is the most local level. And then if you look at this part to the left, you see a larger area, and you can identify schools and other houses. Her school is here. So it's a kind of a neighborhood area, which is familiar to her. And you can see the trees and the flowers and the major buildings and so on. And you can see the flower road here. Flower road enlarged is shown here. And then if you go here, this is Hokkaido. And she lives here at the near the center of Hokkaido. And Hokkaido is full of flowers. And it's part of Japan. Japan is full of flowers. So her dream is to make the locality, the island, the country, and beyond full of flowers. So it's her dream map also, based on her very careful observations at different scale levels. So Asahika environmental map emphasizes the one's own observation on the ground. It leads one to larger areas. Now, this one, there are 4 maps showing how the map contest is held. This is actually the site of the exhibition, and then award-winning ceremony, and a photograph of those winning the awards with the representatives of various organizations and so on, offering the awards. And there is a kind of workshop which is organized by university students. And so it's completely mixed participants. Elementary school pupils, junior high, senior high students, and some teachers and families, they're all here. And they are enjoying the workshop organized by the students of Hokkaido University of Education. Unfortunately, this year we couldn't have it, and last year as well because of COVID. So if you visit the website of the Society for Environmental Map Education, which organizes the map contest, this is a website. If you click it, so this is a website, and you can see this year's award-winning maps. You can see here, and if you click, here, you see how the exhibition, actually exhibition itself took place, although the ceremonies were not. And this is the 31st map exhibition. Actually, it's the 31st time, starting in 1991. This is the 31st time. And this is, these are the maps. And going back. You can see various photographs. Actually, this person was a high school teacher and now working in university, and in Japan, quite eminent Professor Ono, and he's explaining the maps to the people. So it looks quite empty, but it's an online award ceremony. So the award-winning students appear on the screen, and the award is presented virtually at the same place as the previous years. And if you click here, it's a three-dimensional exhibition. So if you are interested in this map, you can enlarge. You can enjoy it by yourself later. But I show you just how it looks like. Just like you're walking here, you can see if you stop here and turn left, look like that. And if I stand here, if I stand here, how does it? I think you can do it much better than I did. And okay. And coming back to the home page, sorry, if we go down, you see this. Sorry in Japanese, but okay. Now, so coming back to this. Now, please do try by yourself. You can start from here. It's a website. Now, about network of environmental map education. I talked about the SEME, Society for Environmental Map Education. People who are interested in environment, education, and map gather with different priorities. But we are together, working together to make environmental map contest a success. Now, there are some words written here, so you can come back again. The map contest is held annually at Asahikawa City, Japan, in order to enhance environmental awareness of school children and to improve their skills of outdoor observation, map making, and map use. The works are evaluated by specialists of geography and environmental and map education, as well as experienced teachers. Distinct works are commended and displayed in the exhibition. Applications are open to all school children of primary and secondary school levels, 6 to 18 years old, throughout the world. And for the sake of time, I just skip those, but just look at the titles of each part. Significance in map education, significance in comprehensive science education. And in science education, I listed those 7. In order to make and present environmental maps, the children will generally follow the process set below. And then I want to emphasize multi-scale views. René Devos drew people's attention to the importance of linking global environmental concern with grassroots action. In fact, what is needed is a multi-scale view and action, which includes the following. A, which is common, popular, think globally, act locally, but it's one of 4 important things. The other 3 are think globally, act globally, think locally, act globally, and think locally, act locally. They're all important. Map using skill is a fundamental for multi-scale thinking ability, as well as for spatial and regional thinking faculty. The environmental map contest puts emphasis on on-site observation, that is focused on locality as well as on map skills. They together can pave the way to the multi-skill views. Okay, the question. What did you learn from the 2 maps shown as examples? 2, give 2 unique points of this map contest with explanations. Okay. So that's all for part 2. Now, part 3. On International Symposium on Global Environmental Education 2008. It was held July 2008 at Sapporo. This is the scene from the opening ceremony. And you can see, again, Professor Shin is in this symposium. He is now talking here, and I'm sitting just next to him. So you can see how frequently I and Professor Sin worked together. We have very close indeed. And we have very important points to share. The education and science and society are always with us. Now, why this symposium was held? 2008 is a year when G8 summit was held in Hokkaido. So Hokkaido University of Education, which is the largest university of education in Japan. In Japan, university education is all national. And Hokkaido University of Education is the largest university of education in Japan. And I discussed with the president of the university, Professor Himama, who is my colleague, who was my colleague. And I said that the environmental situation in, in the world, excuse me, was deteriorating, as we could see in particularly on Geo4, which was the report by UNEP, United Nations Environment Program, which issues with a big report every several years. And report 4, Geo4, is particularly remembered because of that impact. And we could see this sort of very serious deterioration. And this is world population. In India, it's very serious and still serious. But anyway, in Asia, in Africa, and other parts, it's increasing enormously. It affects all the aspects of human life. And energy consumption, it's also increasing enormously. It's evident 20 years ago, very evident. And land degradation. Particularly in Asia, it's very serious in many parts of Asia, India as well. And the coastal areas in particular have serious problems. Population, economic activities, and many disasters are particularly serious in coastal areas. And it's a very famous diagram made by Munich Re, and overall losses and insured losses due to natural hazards. And this diagram shows up to 2005. At the time, it's taken very seriously. And as you know, this exponential increase is continuing still now. And I myself visited many places in Asia, particularly China and India, very often. And this is a picture I took from a train in China. It's a really astonishing view I saw. people use those very steep and eroded dangerous ground for trees, for fruit trees. They are not forest. They are farmland for fruits. And again, this is from China. The forest near the edge of the desert is converted to desert. You can see all almost dying trees. I'm really shocked. So I thought that the education, environmental education, particularly global level education, environmental education, doesn't reflect those very rapidly changing environment, worsening environment to account. The environmental education at the time didn't look well treating those harsh situations. ESD2, Education for Sustainable Development, even ESD was not enough in my eyes to address those dangerous situations. So that sort of situation was behind me, actually, to convince the president of the university to hold the global environmental education symposium. And this is a relaxing time of the symposium. Professor Singh is there. And the people who are familiar with the IGU may also know this lady. This lady is Professor Wei Dongjin. Professor Wei. Professor Wei has been the chair of Commission on Geoheritage. And she was also very keen on environmental map education. So she organized the Chinese students to send the maps to Asahikawa for the contest. Before China and Japan had the famous island dispute, there were hundreds of maps coming from China, many schools in China. They were gathered in the Beijing Normal University where she's working, and they were sent to Asahikawa. In some years, it's nearly 1,000 maps came from China. And then I talked to her and said that it's beyond our capacity. So please limit to the number to 200. And then still 200 is a big number. But anyway, Asahikawa map contest was very popular in China as well. And she was a key person. So she was also invited to the Sapporo meeting. Now, one of the outcome of that global environmental education symposium is a publication of this book, Global Environmental Education. It's published by Rawat, located in India. And global is a term made by combining global and local, and it emphasizes multi-scale views in dealing with global and local problems or activities. It is a key to the improvement of environmental education. Global environmental problems such as global warming, resource problems, and population problems are becoming increasingly serious in recent years, as warned in the Global Environmental Outlook, GEO4, of the United Nations Environment Program, and so on. That's what I said. That's written here. Now, International Symposium on Local Environmental Education. So what I said are more or less written here. This international symposium is intended to be an agora in front of G8 Hokkaido Toyako Summit, where people concerned with global environmental problems and environmental education gather, discuss, exchange information, ideas, and make friends for improvement and promotion of environmental education at the global as well as regional to local levels. Global is a term made by combining global and local. It emphasizes multi-scale views in dealing with global and local problems or activities. It is a key to the improvement of environmental education. Global environmental problems such as global warming, resource problems, and population problems are becoming increasingly serious in recent years, as warned in the Global Environmental Outlook, GEO4, of the United Nations Environment Program Unit. Environmental education tends to be characterized by local to national conditions and political will, and such issues as global environmental problems, global local linkages, and the responsibilities of the global community members are often treated only superficially or marginally at schools. There are many local, regional, national, and international initiatives to overcome this adverse situation, but there are various obstacles to hinder such effort, such as social, economic, cultural, regional, and disciplinary gaps. For the future of our children and their children, improvement and the promotion of environmental education throughout the world is of paramount importance. The importance of education dealing with these problems has been stressed repeatedly in the previous GS Summit and other related international meetings, but there still exists a wide gap between the serious global environmental situation and the reality of the environmental education in the world. So we decided to issue the Sapporo Declaration on Local Environmental Education. To those gathering for G8 Hokkaido TOEIC Summit, we need to give young people a hope in the future and provide a positive context for fostering active citizens able to build a more just and sustainable future, bringing a better quality of life for all. To achieve this, we need to reorientate our approach to environmental education through, first, improving learning opportunities through giving every young person in the world access to basic education. Two, enhancing opportunities for students at all levels for environmental learning, including first-hand observation and experience of the environment. Three, providing students at all levels with environmental learning that connects with current issues such as natural hazards and prepares them to be safer in the future. Four, giving teachers at all levels more opportunities for environmental learning and education. Five, strengthening opportunities for lifelong environmental learning and value education. Six, providing access to more up-to-date, accurate, and reliable information for teachers, students, and other learners of environmental subjects. Seven, improving school textbooks and other education materials for environmental learning related to sustainable development. Two, strengthening existing good practices and overcoming the barriers and gaps that hinder their spread and development through promoting the existing good practices of environmental education, whether small or large, local or global. 2, encouraging cultural and regional collaboration to facilitate the flow of information and ideas that help to improve and encourage environmental education and mutual understanding. 3, overcoming disciplinary barriers that hinder the flow of information and ideas that promote education for sustainable development. 4, providing a platform for communicating and mutual understanding between different groups of people. And 3, enhancing research-led teaching through providing funds for research and evaluation of current good practices in environmental education. 2, establishing a systematic empirical basis of the value and effectiveness of environmental education. As a new conceptual, practical, and research framework of environmental education that synthesizes the above, we, the participants of the GEE Symposium 2008, suggest the promotion of global environmental education as an approach to bring about a meaningful integration of the global and local, and through this support, a more effective environmental education. Okay, question. Why did Hokkaido University of Education organize International Symposium on Global Environmental Education 2008? Okay, finish, and then go to part 4. Significance of Professor Shin's paper. Now, I show some slides which Professor Shin showed. I didn't modify them at all. The title, Designing and Shaping Global Environmental Education, GEE in short, Challenges and Opportunities. Actually, you can see what you showed in the symposium in the book, which I just mentioned, the Rawat book. He made a slight change. The title of his presentation, he added this red part to local. Previously, he said global environmental education. Then he added to local. But in fact, what he talked about in the symposium was global to local. He just didn't mention to local in the presentation, but he thought it's relevant to add to local when he wrote the paper for the book. The contents are mostly the same. The contents of the presentation in the symposium and the one you can find in the book, contents are almost the same. And because that book was published in India, so it's easy for the audience to get the book. And you can see every detail of that. I show only a few figures in the book, actually. In the book, you can see this figure and this figure, but it's in a black and white. So it's not clear as the one you see here. Now, I draw your attention to the term scientific. Here it says educating a scientific theme. Okay, this is, I repeat, this Professor Shin's presentation, okay? Educating scientific theme. He emphasizes scientific science. It's a very important point, which you should better remember. For him, sustainability education or environmental education is science, science itself. It's a very strong point. So he tries to put those important things as a scientist, and they should be taken into education properly. For example, this is one example. It's a biodiversity provides us with such and such. He's talking about the biodiversity and try to give the idea of the importance of biodiversity to those who are learning, the children or adults, the same, those who are learning. For those who are learning, it's very important to keep those things in mind when they think about the biodiversity. Say shelter, food, clean air and water, medicine, clothes, very detailed, economic opportunities, tourism and the use of forest, fish, other natural resources, timber, oils, gums, fibers and so on, pollination, food and erosion control, natural waste removal, spiritual, even spiritual culture and aesthetic values. It's a very wide views and very important. And I should say there is a very kind of oriental philosophical aspects which I see in the writings by Indians, by Chinese, as well as Japanese. It's stronger than the many writings in the West. Anyway, please look at this later in a more carefully. I don't go into all of them. Now, I showed this conclusion. This is a conclusion of Professor Sin's presentation, not mine, okay? Conclusion, it's quite important. Situation of environmental degradation is complex in the context of developing countries. There are huge potential of natural resources in developing countries like India, which are facing the challenges in the form of environmental-related conflicts, arising out of poverty, population growth, and careless application of technology. Conflict resolution and environmental negotiation at various levels has provided opportunities which should be given priorities in global environmental education or global environmental education. Improving education would ensure supply of ecological services to every field, remove hunger and poverty from poor areas, provide green cover over denuded areas, and promote environmental health. The development of modern data gathering techniques and space-assisted education programs using EduSat opens a new possibility of GE. There is a need to establish autonomous global environmental education center at the national and state levels, headed by GE Commissioner, in order to promote common guidelines and regulating curriculum. Links between space agencies and the national and state educational agencies need to be improved. Global environmental practices can be best understood by analyzing remotely sensed global and national data with socioeconomic and cultural data. There is need to develop partnership between government, private, and civic sectors. Therefore, GE initiatives will become a key science for decision support of sustainable development and management of environmental resources at local, national, regional, and global levels. Now, I want to draw your attention particularly to the last point. Here you can see the term science. Okay, I repeat this part. GEE, Global or Global Environmental Education Initiatives, will become a key science. Saying education is a key science, GEE education is key science for decision support of sustainable development and management of environmental resources at local, national, regional, and global level. That's the most important point, which I think he wanted to say. It's a science. No, I almost said the, the answer almost. But anyway, question is, what have you learned from Professor Sin's lecture? There must be many views. So there is not one single answer. There can be many answers. So this is the end of the section. International Action Framework for Sustainable Development. Now, in around 2015, actually 2015 is a kind of a special year for those who are interested in sustainability, because the scientific communities and the education communities interested in the sustainability experienced a major change of the framework. As you see, ICSU, International Council for Science, the ISCC, International Social Science Councils, they together organized many projects for sustainability. One major program was IGBP, International Geospatial Program. And mostly it's done by what are called natural scientists. While IGP, which is established by ICSU and ISC together, International Human Dimensions Program, are mainly dominated by what are called human scientists or social scientists. UNESCO played an important role also. And ESD was actually led by UNESCO, Education for Sustainable Development. United Nations made ESD. And actually, ESD was based on Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is very important. It's also the Future Earth. Now we have Future Earth. Future Earth officially started in 2015. It's also based on Agenda 21 and approved by United Nations. So I linked them. And Agenda 21 was behind Millennium Development Goals. And the next slide shows my involvement. It's a personal, kind of personal, but INSEE 91, I mentioned already. And the International Geographer Union. Actually, I became president of International Geographer Union, partly supported by Professor RBC, actually, 2016, and was president until 2020. But anyway, through those channels, I was linked with the International Council for Science, ICSU, and the IGBP. And also, I started IGU LAC. This is a LAC. LAC, Land Use Land Cover Change Program, was established by IGBP and IHDP. And I was also involved in IGU LAC and LAC through IGU LAC. They're separate, but working together. But anyway, ESD So it's linked an international symposium on local environmental education, which we just saw. It's linked with ESD. Oh, sorry. Oops. No. Sorry for confusion. And EOROS, Encyclopedia of Life Support Systems, which I didn't mention, but this is one. And I was the honorary theme editor of Regional Sustainable Development Review, Japan, devoted under the auspices of the UNESCO EOROS publishes Oxford Encyclopedia of Life Support Systems. It's a huge encyclopedia. It's a digital encyclopedia, but some parts, the main parts, were printed on papers. And I showed one of the 3 big volumes where I wrote. And through encyclopedia, I was connected with UNESCO and the global environmental education, connected with the ESD and so on. So that's how I was involved in sustainability programs. And now it's International Action Framework for Sustainable Development, circa 2020, around now. The red lines here indicate the links desired to be strengthened further, meaning the red lines are not strong enough yet. We have to consolidate those lines. IC is was made by ICSU and ICC jointly. IC, International Science Council, started from 2018. ESD, IC should be linked with ESD more, and IGU should strengthen the relation with ESD further, and is SDGs as well, and UNESCO also, and so on. And particularly, as a president of the IGU, I emphasize the importance of linking ESD, futures, FE, and SDGs. Each of those 3 should be promoted much more. But at the same time, we have to pay more attention to the links between those 3. Without strengthening the linkages of those 3, none of those 3 can succeed. They all need the other 2. There are some things which I want to draw your attention to. The first one is ICA's effort. ICA is International Cartographic Association. They have a very strong tie with the United Nations, and they have mapping for a sustainable world. It's a kind of program, and there is a big publication, and you can have access to that book online if you visit International Cartographic Association website. You can easily get the book. It contains a lot of good examples of the kind of maps, which are useful for SDGs. SDGs, for the success of the SDGs, we need a lot of good maps. And Future Earth can support SDGs by providing good data and good maps to the SDGs. So this is United Nations homepage, Mapping for a Sustainable World. So it's made by United Nations and ICA. And there is a website you can see below. You can visit it later. And then this is another initiative. It's a Trust for Sustainable Living. It's also very important. And you can see my photo actually here at the center about here. I was invited to TSL conference, and it's for education. And now TSL has close link with ESD and the futures now. So they are really linking futures and ESD. So please look at it again. You can see, you can find a lot of useful information. And this one, the picture was taken 5-6 years ago, I believe. This is the work in India. You can see Professor R.B. Singh here and me here. And Professor Dasgupta here. He is actually, he was the president of IUGG. And he's still active indeed. And the interesting thing, an important thing here is there are children and teachers and also the IGU executive members here and here. So the science and education are together for the working of IYGU, International Year of Global Understanding. And there was this very nice meeting, gathering in Delhi in that year. So in India, you have this sort of a very important initiative, and I hope they are further developed. And they contribute to coming back to this. Yes, I repeat, ESD, futures, SDGs have to be promoted together and have to be linked together. And we can do a lot of things as geographers to contribute to them. So the question, what do you think you may do with your students for ESD, futures, or SDGs? Okay, that's all for my lecture. Thank you for listening and watching. Goodbye.
Hello from Turkey. I'm Assistant Professor Dr. Şirin Gülcen from Süleyman Demirel University Faculty of Architecture, Department of City and Regional Planning, Turkey. Today, our lecture is on sustainability and sustainable development. We will be again giving the lecture in 3 sections. Let's start with the sustainability concept. Sustainability is a doctrine that economic growth and development within the broadest limits of ecology will be achieved through mutual interaction and will be preserved over time. Sustainability means the continuation of human life by creating a certain vital and special quality level or by preserving the existing quality level. Sustainability also means to maintain the existence of settlements and nations by targeting people, society, environment, and development, or to maintain the existence by developing and structuring. Researchers agree that sustainability depends on social, economic, environmental, and governance factors. It's a concept that predicts being resistant and ensures livability. Let's move on with the concept of sustainable development. Sustainable development idea has emerged and has become a priority in our lives and in our professional lives since 1960s. The variables manipulation tools on which development theories are based are under the control of the nation states at that time. After the mid-1980s, neoliberal policies have shaped nature, the environment, and human settlements as the capital of development and weakened the ability of action and control in the hands of the nation states, which is used for the benefit of society and for universal benefit. It is used as a regulatory principle in sustainable development vision declarations and comprehensive plans. The words sustainability and development are dynamic concepts, and they both describe a process. Let's look at the meaning. According to Tetior, sustainable development is a kind of economic, social, and ecological development that occurs in a certain period of time and is made to meet changing human needs. According to UN, it is the new methods determined to meet the current needs of economic and social development that do not prevent future generations from meeting their own needs. Let's look at the Sustainable Development Venn diagram. We have three aspects: economic development, social progress, and environmental responsibility. And in their intersection point, we see the sustainable development. Even though this concept has emerged and has been the subject of many efforts, it has been criticized too. It is criticized for the destruction of nature in the production and reproduction process, lying about basic needs, public goods, and the transformation of nature into capital, and increasing technological determinism and private property. We must look to the history of the conceptual evolution to understand the policies and strategies and the certain concepts more broadly. First, we must say that the member states of the UN have been going through various stages to ensure sustainable development, and various goals and objectives have been defined as a result of a series of meetings and studies. Central and local governments and non-governmental organizations of the countries make efforts to achieve this, and after a certain stage, new goals and targets are defined at a later date, to be met at a later date. All these efforts, planned and expected, doesn't achieve the expected success as it requires. The first word used is not this conference, the Conference on the Human Environment held in 1972, but the meaning can be grasped from the content of the conference. The Stockholm Declaration and Action Plan for the Human Environment were the documents declared, and as I mentioned, the concept of sustainable development wasn't used. Since the relationship between environment and development and the importance of environmental protection for future generations are included, it can be thought that the base of the concept is this conference. It contains 26 principles, actions, and 109 recommendations on nature, environmental protection, and the continuation of human life. Recommendations for action at the international level regarding the planning and management of human settlements for environmental quality are given in the second part. The meaning of sustainability is first included in the World Charter for Nature in 1982 at a UN General Assembly. This document defines certain principles and functions for regulating the sustainability of nature. The concept of sustainable productivity is used only in one part of the document. From the principles of the Charter and the Plan of Action, it is seen that the document was formatted only in order to sustain economic development, not the sustainability of the human life or the nature. And that's why it's been criticized, and Yazar, with a similar foresight, and starting from the 8th principle of the Charter, states that the assertion that development is essential for the provision of a decent environment reflects the demands of the developing countries. However, these countries do not compromise on economic development. Therefore, he states that it is impossible to put forward the Stockholm Conference as a platform on which the foundations of the concept are laid. It's the real meaning it doesn't contain. We see the Brundtland report, our common feature, as the main document that contains the concept of sustainable development. It is the word is included in this report, and it has been prepared by the World Commission on Environment and Development in 1987. It has been called Brundtland because the head of the commission was the Norwegian president Gro Harlem Brundtland. So it's been named by her surname. In the Brundtland report, sustainable development is located at the intersection of social, economic, and environmental goals. And this report has been the basis of the future actions. In the report, sustainable development has been defined as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In all studies carried out after this report, sustainability issue has become a priority for countries, cities, city decision makers, and urban planners. The report has been criticized for the contradictory nature of its aims. The UN Conference on Environment and Development, which is also called the Earth Summit, it has been the basic, sustainable development has become the basic concept of this conference. It has been held in 1992 in Rio. Governments adopted Agenda 21, Rio Declaration, and the Forest Principles Report. The objective of the conference is to identify international actions and to set the agenda for environment and development issues that will contribute to the direction of international cooperation and development policy. In order to monitor the decisions taken at the conference, the Sustainable Development Commission established within the UN and held regular meetings every year. Although the conference is called an environmental conference, it's a development conference. With the conference, it was expected to ensure the sustainability of development, not the environment. While nation states prioritized development after the mentioned conference, local governments began to give importance to quality of life and its measurement. We see Habitat 2 conference, which is also called the City and Town Summit. It has been held in 1996 in Istanbul, my country. And Istanbul Declaration is announced after the conference. It's an important conference because sustainable urbanization was emphasized through the themes of settlement and housing. In Habitat 2, unlike the first conference in Vancouver in 1976, rather than states, the contribution of non-governmental organizations is exercised and the importance of human settlements and the sustainability of urbanization are mentioned. We later see the World Summit on Sustainable Development. As you may see, sustainability is now on the heading of the conference. It's also called the Earth Summit 2002 or Rio +10. It is held in 2002 in Johannesburg. At this summit, it is aimed to find solutions to the difficulties experienced in the implementation of the decisions taken at the 1992 UN Conference on Environment and Development and in achieving the goals with a sustainable development perspective. The concept of sustainability was included in the title of a supranational summit for the first time. The political document and the Johannesburg implementation plan are the official documents of the conference. The implementation plan consists of 11 chapters on sustainable development. As you may see, now, although the sustainable development issue was the priority of the developed countries, and besides sustainable development of nature or human life, it was the sustainable development of the capital or the investments was the issue held in the first conferences. And now the UN environment is questioning the how the efforts couldn't be managed and how we will just achieve sustainable development. I mean, there is a turning, but still there is the discussion of a dichotomy between sustainable development of capital and sustainable development of nature and human life. We see UN Millennium Summit, and it's been held in 2000, where the Millennium Declaration is announced. And this is the declaration based on the OECD's, the shaping the 21st century, the contribution of development cooperation report. It's based on this OECD's report, and a number of measurable international development goals were defined in this report, and the Millennium Declaration just covers these, and it is formed of 8 chapters and 32 paragraphs, and now we see the strengthening of the UN Other than this, let's look at the other chapters: values and principles, peace, security and disarmament, development and poverty reduction, protecting our common environment, human rights, democracy and good governance, protection of the vulnerable, meeting Africa's special needs. As I told you before, the progress wasn't achieved, so there's the presence of the institutional presence of the UN is questioned. The UN, to realize these efforts and to be reliable again, just opened the discussion of strengthening the UN as an institution. This declaration defines the Millennium Development Goals, MDGs, and the progress in the implementation of the declaration was reviewed at the UN's 2005 World Summit. As the progress in the objectives was uncertain by 2012, a new process was initiated. And this is the 2012 Rio +20 Summit. It is the 20th anniversary of the 1992 Rio Conference and 10th anniversary of the World Sustainable Development Summit of 2002. At the Rio +20 Summit, it's expected to reach a common international definition for the Green Growth Goal, which is the redefinition of the Sustainable Development Goal. This goal has been used all over the world since the 1992 Rio Summit, according to today's needs. And we see the post-2015 development agenda afterwards. The agenda has set various objectives following the Millennium Development Goals, with a process between 2012 and 2015. In this process, objectives are defined with the awareness that progress in quality dimensions of development, such as human rights, access to justice, good governance, law and security, are part of the framework for sustainable and equitable growth. And after this process, 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development is announced. It is prepared by the UN DESA, and it's accepted by the UN General Assembly in 2015. And now we have accepted 17 Sustainable Development Goals and 169 targets. And these have been determined and put into force by 2016, and they replaced the MDGs and to be realized till 2030. And this is the last policy nation states have decided. The goals are called the 2030 Sustainable Development Goals, and every goal has a specific goal, and every goal has a has a specific objective, and every goal has a planned realization date. The relationship between sustainable urban development and management and human quality of life has been clearly demonstrated in each goal. The main focus of the SDGs are ending extreme poverty, protecting the environment, fighting inequality and injustice, equitable sharing of wealth, living in peace, and correcting climate change. For achieving sustainable development, it is foreseen that global goals can be realized with country commitments. With 17 goals, the reference of development has evolved towards a good quality and good quality of life and good life. This specified evolution is not a conceptual evolution declared by the UN. In particular, there has been a transformation in the practice of local governments. Life quality is dependent upon crime prevention, increased security, enhanced physical and mental health, environmental quality and social equity, sustainable resources and social development, which can be more strongly interfered in at the local level. When priority is given to quality of life, the scope of what will be sustained is expanded according to development. For Tekeli, when the concept of quality of life is mentioned, it is meant a more balanced quality of life that takes into account not only the development hedonistic benefits and pleasures, but also the development of autonomic individual capacities and the satisfaction provided by their performance based on these capacities. Are we today able to meet the quality of life requirement? We couldn't, and it is certain that maintaining quality of life is more easy in developed countries than in less or developing countries. Giving priority to the concepts of quality of life has brought about a redefinition of three concepts: participation and governance, innovation and sustainability. Sustainable development goals are the goals that countries are expected to meet. So they determine their own nation's sustainability development strategies, review the achievement level of sustainable development goals with the UN meetings, and share their good practices and experiences. Private sector organizations, on the other hand, create new markets for themselves in these meetings. The level of development of countries, the awareness in the management of cities, the integration and protection of environmental awarenesses in decision-making processes, and the institutional power of the planning profession are the determining factors in ensuring sustainable development. SDG 11 is more important for us as planners and geographers when compared to other SDGs, which are also valuable and important. The 11th development goal concerns sustainable cities. It is called SDG 11, making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. It's also called, in short, sustainable cities and communities. Cities are required to meet the stated purpose by 2030. And lastly, we also see the Habitat 3 conference between 17 and 20 October 2016. It's held in Ecuador, and the purpose of the conference is to determine the sustainable urbanization prediction of the UN according to the new urban agenda. This is a new proposal. The topics discussed in the conference were collaboration with local administrations and civil society, reducing the negative effects of urban activities and chemicals, environmentally friendly management, reducing and eliminating waste, reducing the effects of cities on climate change, taking into account population trends and projections in rural-urban development strategies. There is a document of revised zero draft, and here the new urban goals assigns planning a central position at the national, regional, and local levels. Article 44 is important. It's considering that urban form, infrastructure, and building design are important determinants of resource efficiency. It is stated that energy efficiency, renewable energy sources, sensitivity, productivity, environmental protection, and sustainable development in the urban economy are promoted. In the said document, there are statements that emphasize the reduction of fossil fuel use in urban areas and the realization of energy-efficient planning and design approaches, as well as the need to provide the necessary support and infrastructure for the use of renewable energy sources in cities. Because we know that by 2050, most of the places of the earth will be arid and fossil fuels will be ended. Now we're going to talk about an important report on sustainable development for you to understand the issue better. And this report is important because not only in containing the recent data on countries' performances, it also covers some notions and foresights for the COVID-19 and its impacts on SDGs. According to this report, which is prepared by Satz et al. In 2020, the COVID-19 has demonstrated the importance of sustainable development goals, national action frameworks, and international cooperation. COVID-19 will have severe negative impacts on the most SDGs. It is stated as will have because currently we are not able to see the exact impact on the nation's economies or social life. The necessary measures taken to respond to the immediate threat of COVID-19, including the shutdown of many economic activities for weeks, even months, have led to a global economic crisis with massive job losses and major impacts, especially on vulnerable groups. This is a significant setback for the world's ambition to achieve the SDGs, in particular for poor countries and population groups. The only bright spot in this picture is the reduction in environmental impacts resulting from declines in economic activity. It has been reported that in some part of China, the sky can be seen again and it is blue. A key objective will be to restore economic activity without simply restoring old patterns of environmental degradation. However, all long-term consequences of the pandemic remain highly uncertain at this point. Maybe 1 or 2 years will be enough to see the impacts. All countries need to strengthen the resilience of the health systems and prevention programs. The SDGs and the 6 SDG transformations can inform the recovery from COVID-19. As the international community, regional organizations, and countries plan the post-COVID-19 recovery, it will be important to put the SDGs at the heart of policymaking. COVID-19 doesn't resolve the climate and biodiversity crisis, we must note, and it is amplifying income inequalities and other forms of inequality. So it is not a solution to that can be used. The pandemic cannot be a solution. Asian countries have made the most progress towards the SDGs since the adoption of the goals in 2015. Asian countries have also responded most effectively to the COVID-19 outbreak. The shift of the geopolitical and economic global center of gravity from the North Atlantic region to the Asia-Pacific region is likely to be accelerated by the crisis. Solidarity and partnerships are critical to address and prevent health, economic, and humanitarian crises. Data gaps and time lags in official statistics require urgent investment in statistical capacity and increased coordination between governments and the private sector. Now we can look at the development levels of SDGs in short-term and the short-term impacts of COVID-19 on sustainable development goals. We see that highly negative impacts are present in SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 3, good health and well-being, and there is in SDG 4, quality education and gender equality, SDG 5, we see mixed or moderately negative impact. In SDG 6, which is clean water and sanitation, and SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, we again see mixed or moderately negative impact. In SDG 8, which is decent work and economic growth, a highly negative impact is observed. SDG 9, there is, which is industry, innovation, and infrastructure, there is mixed or moderately negative impact. In SDG 10, reducing inequalities, highly negative impact is observed. In SDG 11, sustainable cities and communities, there is mixed or moderately negative impact. Impact is unclear in SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, and SDG 13, climate action. It is also unclear in SDG 14, life below water, and SDG 15, life on land. SDG 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions, there is mixed or moderately negative impact, which is also observed in SDG 17, partnerships for the goals. When we look at 6 SDG transformation, we see as transformation 1, education, gender, and equality. Transformation 2, health, well-being, and demography. Transformation 3, energy decarbonization, and sustainable industry, transformation for sustainable food, land and water and oceans, transformation 5, sustainable cities and communities, transformation 6, digital revolution for sustainable development. This is also called between leave no one behind and circularity and decoupling, the bound between these. The report has been produced by sections, and SDG index and dashboards is one of them. It's about the country performance on the 17 SDGs, and they are equal weighted to all 17 goals. This report is not an official SDG monitoring tool, but instead complements efforts of national statistical offices and international organizations to collect data on and standardize in SDG indicators. To this end, SDR 2020 presents the most up-to-date data from official resources as well as non-official sources about the sustainable development of the world. This year's SDG index and dashboards do not reflect the impact of COVID-19. As I said, it may take a few years. From today, without knowing the impact, it's hard to develop policies and strategies. The projection of country trajectories based on recent progress may not provide a realistic sense of the likely future. That's why, as COVID-19 risks changing trajectories relating to many SDGs. So we need time. When we look at the index scores, we see India ranked 117 with a score of 61.9. And we will now look at it in more deeply, but there is an arrow system for denoting SDG trends, which is decreasing, stagnating, moderately improving, and on track or maintaining SDG achievement. There is also the situation of no data available. When we look at 2020 SDG dashboards, level and trends for East and South Asia, we see India, which is only in land on land, it is diminishing, but the others either no data or objectives are met or improvement is achieved. One of the sections is on policy and monitoring frameworks, which covers the countries' policy-making bodies, strategies and actions, policy actions on the SDGs. And we just see that there's a lot of tables, diagrams or presentations. One is important. It's on climate mitigation. And you see India is compatible in situation, and this is when compared to Russia, USA, or my country, Turkey, it's a better positioning. And the other section covers the methods and data tables, which is on how the data is collected through which methods. And it's about metrics and issues. For example, when you look at the SDG 5, women empowerment, the metrics are gender pay gap and other empowerment measures, or violence against women. Or when we look at inequality, we see wealth inequality and vertical mobility. In the terms of climate change, for example, leading indicators for decarbonization, greenhouse gas emissions from land use can be the metrics. Each data is developed on these metrics. So the country profiles are prepared, and this is another section of the report. And we just see India like this in the report. And detailed information is given. For example, regional average scores, index scores, spillover index, and Average performance by SDGs are diagrammed. When we see SDG trends, we see that more in detail, the one we see in the South Pacific table. And we see that except life on land, progress is on number 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, and 13. And there's no progress in 4, 5, 11, and about cities, and life below water, and 16 and 17. We now come to the sustainable urban development concept. To understand this concept, we must talk, first of all, it's related with many issues and concepts, but we must talk first about the world and regional urbanization. Over the next 30 years to 2050, there will be an unprecedented increase in the world's urban population, with the Asia Pacific and Africa regions accounting for some 86% of the world's urban population growth. Asia Pacific's urban population will increase from around 1.9 billion to 3.2 billion. Africa's from 414 million to over 1.2 billion, despite all the migration towards the north. In Asia Pacific, the largest increases in urban population are expected in India, which will add 497 million to its urban population, which means that the priority must be given to urban areas and the urbanization in cities in the country. South and Southwest Asia is the largest urbanized sub-region in Asia Pacific and one of the least urbanized regions in the world. The sub-region, which includes India, is poised for a major urban transition, and the numbers of people involved are very large. Data on the number of cities in various city sizes in 2010 and 2025 by country and sub-region indicates that India will grow from 3 to 6 megacities. This increase in the number of smaller cities is particularly apparent in India also. Annual change in urban area population density for primary and secondary cities can only be data is available for the years 1990 and 2000. There is no data for 2020, and we can only speak about this for this time period. And it's obvious that the falling density is a concern. It is in the secondary cities where the growth in urban areas and greatest falls in density will be the highest. The urban density between megacities and secondary cities will vary significantly. We can give an example from India again. The urban densities in Mumbai fell from 466 persons per hectare to 436 persons per hectare between these years, while urban densities in Hyderabad, a secondary city of 5.7 million, fell from 282 persons per hectare to 180 persons per hectare for the same period. We just talk about urban metabolism because to understand the urban sustainability and its relation to sustainable urban development, we must talk about first urban metabolism. This understanding, like anthropomorphism or behavioralism that appeared after the postmodern era, by the postmodern era, this understanding thinks that the city is a living creature. It is a metabolism. It departs from the animal's metabolism because it says that animal convert food, water, and oxygen into energy and waste products like urine and carbon dioxide. And it produces waste. The energy produced may be used to perform activities like moving, breathing, or thinking, or it may be stored for later. These processes form part of the animal's metabolism to stay alive and function. This is what sustainability is. It requires sources and it generates waste products. In much the same way, cities need energy, materials, water, and nutrients to provide sustenance and shelter for its citizens, to produce goods and services, to grow and to eliminate waste and pollution. And in the same way that an animal's metabolism is the result of the cooperation between the brain, organs, and enzymes, urban metabolism is facilitated by the city's governance policies, its infrastructure, and its citizens, also its elements, and it functions so as a metabolism. More of the world, people are moving to cities, which must expand at a very rapid rate to accommodate the inflows. Bigger cities demand more food, more water, more fuel, which in turn causes an increase in emissions, refuse, and wastewater production and waste production. While urban systems depend on ecosystem services to thrive, they also threaten those same ecosystems through resource use, land encouragement, and pollution. In fact, the modern urban metabolic cycle drives environmental change on a local to global scale, affecting land use and cover, biodiversity, hydrosystems, biogeochemical cycles, and climate. As you remember, we talked about in the previous lecture about Doxiades' 15 ecostates, which is ending with Ecomonopolis, the world as one city. So this is important because the metabolic cycle is becoming one sort of city. Many of these environmental consequences led to new large-scale problems that impact on economic activity and public health. Population density increases, socioeconomic disparities may be exacerbated, and infrastructure problems could rise. As such, researchers emphasize the value of understanding efficient urban metabolism in the context of sustainable city planning. Cities, population growth, and economic development become critical and complex in the process of living in urban areas. Sustainability of the city means the city is managed and planned with a correct and conscious approach, having the quality of physical livable space, uninterrupted and adequate provision of public services, and reducing economic and social risks. In order to achieve the stated result, it is important to develop technically correct infrastructure and superstructure applications, a controlled urban growth, a well-financed investment program, and a conscious understanding of urbanism, conservation awareness, and the vital culture. Nita Gazwa states that urban growth, urban development, poverty, education, migration, as well as water, sanitation, and gender issues should be included in understanding and policies to make human settlements sustainable. It's also stated that sustainable cities should meet their inhabitants' development needs without imposing unsustainable demands on local and global natural resources and systems. It's a biophysical, there is biophysical constraint at the global level when considering sustainability. In this view, urban sustainability is a fluid concept with the goal of devising policies that will improve living and working conditions for present and future generations. In the most general terms, then, urban sustainability can be thought of as the measurable improvement of near and long-term human well-being achieved through actions across environmental, economic, and social dimensions. Again, you must remember the Venn diagram. Sustainability principle, basically the restructuring of cities, approaches to the search for planning in which ecological elements are effective, have started to be discussed. The primary objectives of these approaches are to reduce the use of individual vehicles, to establish a production-consumption waste balance, to adopt recycling models in energy systems, to protect natural habitats, and to reduce their ecological footprints, from urban social, cultural, and economic infrastructure opportunities to social justice and equality principles for all segments of the society. It can be said that it is based on a series of special sociocultural, economic, environmental, and institutional components, ranging from equal benefit to the reduction of urban violence. The main challenge for today's cities is to manage the heavy dependence on ecosystem services, which results in the depletion of nature resources and biodiversity and efforts to mitigate and adapt to climate change while prioritizing public health and quality of life. According to Kennedy et al., a sustainable city can only be one of four which the inflow of material and energy resources and the disposal of waste do not exceed the capacity of the city's surrounding environment. In other words, for achieving environmental sustainability, urban consumption must match or be below what the natural environment, such as forests, soil, and water bodies, can provide. And the resulting pollutants must not overwhelm the environment's ability to provide resources to humans and other members of the ecosystem. Hello, we are just in the last section of the Sustainability and Sustainable Development lecture. Now we are moving on urban sustainability concepts. As you know, cities themselves are not sustainable without water, energy, raw materials, food, and other resources from non-urban areas, and likewise the regions in which they are located depend on cities for resources. The resources needed to support urban life often originate at great distances from their final points of consumption with globalization, thereby extending the special reach of their impacts on global climate change. Cities that develop on an island or walled city perspective, where sustainability is defined as only activities within the city's boundaries, are by definition not sustainable. Sustainable urban areas require several issues, like improved access to public services, renewable as well as conventional sources of energy, adequate employment for their residents, equity both economically and culturally, increasing resilience against the growing impact of natural hazards, and new infrastructure. While aging and deteriorating infrastructure creates further waste and inefficiencies within cities, however, addressing such challenges is hindered by financial stresses and competition for monetary resources. They become a burden to the local or central authority budgets. Sustainability must consider the enormous flows of material, energy, financial resources, and waste into and out of cities. Despite these challenges, urban centers have the potential to capitalize on their growth and initiate diversity in becoming the world's leading lights in terms of sustainability. Urban centers have degraded and from 1985 in USA and from 2005 in Turkey, they are upgraded and transformed. While the effect of urbanization on sustainable development evokes multi-sectoral, intersectoral, and holistic dynamic processes, the relationships and effects covered show a systems approach. We must understand the rapid urbanization to understand sustainable development and urban development issue. Rapid urbanization is a complex and important socioeconomic event of the cities of the last 2 centuries. It causes illegal construction and construction contrary to zoning, as well as an increase in housing areas of low-income people, insufficient and overloaded infrastructure and services, formation of informal sector and industrial areas, disasters, and air pollution. This is what we have been exercising in most of our cities today. Girardet states that cities have the historical opportunity and responsibility to implement technical criteria for the sustainable development of the world with strengthened local governments, and that cultural dynamism and citizen participation will contribute to urban sustainability. The primary task of today's cities is to achieve a sustainable development that aims to create an aesthetic, healthy, and ecological city that fully meets the needs of its inhabitants. In order to fulfill this task, it is necessary to reduce human contact with land and return polluted areas to their natural state. It is clear that, depending on the speed of urban development and urbanization and population growth, land improvement can become a complex process, or it is impossible to restore the damaged place to its former natural state. It also means another burden to the local authority or central authority budgets. To create a sustainable urban environment, it is crucial to measure and assess policies, infrastructure, socio-economic factors, resource use, emissions, and any other processes that contribute to and profit from the city's metabolism, prosperity, and quality of life. This will allow city planning authorities, officials, and governments in general to identify areas of opportunity as well as concern, and to respond by developing realistic sustainability goals with a long-term perspective. From the sustainable use of environmental, renewable, and non-renewable resources in the urban production consumption chain, to broad participation and collaborative planning models in which political, administrative structures, and demographic organizations play a concentric role, to the equal benefit of the urban population from basic human rights and income distribution on the basis of the principle of social justice and urban poverty. It can be defined as an environmentalist development model guided by multiple spatial, socioeconomic, environmental, and political institutional components, ranging from reducing deprivation and violence, making cities healthy and livable, and eliminating the negative effects of urban development on environmental resources and valuables. I must also add that there is this city rights, citizen rights that most governments or local authorities don't even pay respect to. Kelesh defines urban development as the process of increasing the urban population in a country or increasing the number of cities and making them prosperous, as we explained in the previous lecture on urbanization and urban. Sustainable development and sustainable urban development cover physical structure, social justice, sustainable economies, environmental sustainability, and resilience. The effects of economic, social, and environmental dimensions on sustainable development are multifaceted due to the interaction of all these dimensions with each other and with the physical structure and the breadth of the scope of each. The dynamic nature of the sustainable development, together with the stated versatility, makes it difficult to evaluate the concept of sustainable urban development, or in other words, settlements development. What is meant in this section is the concept of sustainable urban development in a broad sense, the economic, social, cultural, structural, and spatial development of the city. It has a development dimension, but it is more a structural and spatial development with economic, social, cultural development. Planned and controlled land development practices and construction are defined as sustainable urban development in the narrow sense. Urban planning practices that foresee the construction processes of sustainable buildings and smart urban growth and growth management provide sustainable urban development. Indicated development constitutes the planning, design, and construction process of urban settlements. For many academicians, the expression of sustainable city and sustainable urban development is used to emphasize the intentions and perfection of political utopia and land use and urban planning actions that are considered creative. In sustainable urban development, balanced trade, public institutions, and education areas should be created, and buildings with local identity building styles and adequate transportation infrastructure between land uses should be provided. I want you to point your attention to new urbanism. Transportation opportunities are supported with well-defined centers and periphery, providing easy access, reducing the number and duration of trips and pollution, and providing mobility to land uses, including urban mixed uses. Özcan and Sinmaz talk about the existence of two different spatial development models on the basis of sustainability. Ecological city, which is the green city model, green urbanism or ecological city, and the compact city model. The ecological city, green city model, is a model that focuses on the effectiveness of environmental resources and values on urban land layout and uses open green space in land use decisions. These two models are the ones that it's their idea that they sustain sustainable urban development. And the other one, the compact city, is an ecological model in which human scale and livable spatial designs are realized, reducing urban energy and resource consumption, limiting the use of individual vehicles, limiting the use of urban lands, minimizing pollution of the environment, using resources effectively and efficiently, vertical construction, and reducing urban mobility. As you remember, vertical construction was the input of modern architecture, and we are still carrying out, by postmodernism, we didn't completely left the modernist thinking, we are still continuing some of it. It is based, or even our cities are constructed according to it, so we have that ideology still in our cities. It is based on objectives such as reducing the footprint, adapting urban production, consumption, and distribution organizations to technological conditions. The spreading process in cities that the compact city model alone will not be sufficient for the realization of sustainable development. It reveals the necessity of using different models that complement each other together. According to Middle, academics focus on sustainability sees it as a spectrum from weak sustainable development to strong development. At the top is the strong definition of idealized sustainability, driven by social equality and a healthy environment, and which can only be achieved through radical change. At the lowest level, there is the dominance of business and the economy, which causes weak sustainability. Evolution of sustainable urban development as a factor in the change of urban plans, how development helps to revive planning activities and is a reason for the change of all types and scale plans, how to define the urban development approach in cities of all sizes and in the plans that form the model of the city, and how it should be integrated with different projections are fundamental questions of the planning institution in the context of urban development. And I believe that geography institution is also looking at from their perspective as parallel. According to Matthew, despite the utopian character of the concept of sustainable development, an interdisciplinary approach should be developed to these and similar questions, because now the problems of the cities are not solvable by only one profession. And as technology also interfered, the dimensions and the content of the problems need many disciplines work together. And geography and urban planning is two disciplines that work mostly together. We just can go forward by looking the sustainable urban development exercise in the European Union. They are controlling the sustainable urban development and achieving it through several documents. One of them is the European Urban Charter that's accepted in 1992 on the qualitative characteristics of urban development and quality of life was adopted. The principles of the Charter can be listed as improving the physical urban environment, continuous and balanced economic development, equitable design practices, improving the existing housing stock, creating social and cultural opportunities in the settlements, and encouraging social development and public participation. Another document is the Aalborg Charter, It's the stepping stone in the creation of sustainable cities. It is adopted as a result of the first European Conference on Sustainable Cities and Towns in 1994. The convention, which covers the issues of urban history and the protection of the cultural environment, emphasized the functions of local governments. It is the document that defines Local Agenda 21. And in this context, the actions and collaborations that local governments in Europe should take. When you compare the dates of these documents with the conferences or meetings I have previously named and explained, they are parallel in timing. City administrations have committed to preparing their own action plans. It is discussed again in the 4th European Conference on Sustainable Cities and Towns, it is the Aalborg 10+, where the participation of 620 local governments from Europe is observed, and 10 basic principles have been put forward to make the concept of sustainable urbanization is a reality. Another one, the last document, is the New Leipzig Charter, the transformative power of cities for the common good. It is accepted in 2020 in November at the informal ministerial meeting under the presidency of Germany. And member states have decided to implement the charter in their national and regional urban policies. New Leipzig Charter constitutes the key policy framework document for sustainable urban development in Europe. In the charter, it has been stated that cities need integrated and sustainable urban development strategies, and it is granted that they will be applied everywhere from the function areas of the cities to their neighborhoods. The document includes a cohesion policy, which predicts a strong association with the city's periphery. Common principles have been the reference in programming the cohesion policy. EU framework for action is the previous document accepted in 1998. It has 4 different policy contexts. It's a framework. It's not a. It's a document, but it's not. It's only defining the framework. Strengthening economic prosperity and employment in cities, the promotion of equality, social belonging, and regeneration, conservation and improvement of the urban environment towards local and global sustainability, and contribution to good governance and local empowerment. EU cities are seen as the place of social and cultural integration, the source of economic prosperity and sustainable development, and the foundation of democracy. With the framework of the action, there is also the concept of sustainable regional development, which is new and will be more in the agenda from this time onwards. For the implementation of the concept, strategic development targets and alternative development strategies have been defined by the relevant administrations. We have the indices issue and indicators issue. To measure the sustainable development or sustainable urban development, indices and indicators are developed by either supranational institutions, international institutions, or private organizations, private companies. There are also national indices and indicators, and we can name them in 3 different levels. They are to allow to monitor the success and impact of sustainable interventions. It has been seen that the scopes and results of the sustainability indices can differ according to country and city level, the goals of the decision makers, and the sustainable strategies of the cities. And we must say that some of them are done for a period of time and later given up. So there are not much indices or indicators that has been still continuing and monitoring the process. EREN and Parihar, I and Parihar, in our review of international sustainable indices, found out that the widespread existence of weak and monotonous sustainable growth is present in the world cities. Indices determines the sustainable level of sustainable development and scope of growth. Indices can be international, regional, and local scale, and also allow for the diagnosis of development problems with good management and scientifically based solutions. They allow urban planners and city decision makers to measure socioeconomic and environmental impacts, identify problems and pressures, and thereby identify areas that will benefit through good governance and science-based responses. So the geographers can take these and implement in methods and to reach cities and help to solve the problems of the cities. To achieve the SDG 11 objective, which is related to the cities, globally defined and comparable indicators are required. A set of sustainable indicators and indices are created, and indicators they are created to measure the performance of strategies and action plans and inform further actions and interventions. The indicators developed to determine the sustainability levels that differ according to the development or urbanization level of the countries. The element that differentiates urban sustainability indicators from economic and social indicators are holistic, future-oriented features developed with discriminatory inputs from many participants of the society. Urban sustainability indicators are tools that allow city planners, city managers, and policymakers to gauge the socioeconomic and environmental impact of, for example, current urban designs, infrastructures, policies, waste disposal systems, pollution, and access to services by citizens. They allow for the diagnosis of problems and pressures, and thus the identification of areas that would profit from being addressed through good governance and science-based responses. They also allow cities to monitor the success and impact of sustainability interventions. There are many indicators for sustainability. You are seeing one of them of the European Commission. We're talking and going to talk about urban growth and sustainable urban growth, but we don't have much time, so I'm going to give a short information about it. Urban growth is the structural growth of a city in physical, demographic, or economic context. Urban growth is more a special growth type. There are two main reasons: one, natural population growth and migration from rural to urban or foreign countries. Natural population growth can be thought without migration and can be thought with migration in this growth type. And this kind of growth is defined in the Urban New Agenda as urban special growth, and it refers to equal rights and control in land ownership, inclusive and sustainable urbanization and participation capacity, integrated and sustainable human settlements planning and management in all countries. The city has different functions, so different relations, different elements, behavior patterns, cultural background, historical background. So each city show different growth form, texture, and types in different models in formation and development history. So applying the same strategies and policies may not be possible, and control must be sustained by urban plans or urban decisions, policies. And when we go to the fringes of the cities, inequalities and just a minute. Inequalities and problems increase, and we know that sprawl of cities doesn't provide sustainable urban development. So we must sustain our cities not to be oil split, grow with oil split growth. And it is accepted that there are three categories depending on the development pattern and transformation character, like infill, edge growth, and expansion. and as well as external growth. So we must know that this, especially infill and edge growth, is more sustainable than external growth. And we must find ways to implement our plans to stop the cities to be more unsustainable. Smart growth, on the other hand, is a form of sustainable targeted growth in which technology is included and predominant. But we must stress that for sustainable urban development or development, smart growth can be a method, but all the cities in the world doesn't have the capacity or ability to create smart growth. Therefore, it is for most of them is cannot be spoken at the moment. It's related to sustainable urbanism, but we cannot achieve it at the moment. But sustainable development ensures sustainable growth, it's certain. And when we come to the conclusion, we can say that today sustainability and sustainable development is unachieved despite all efforts. Efforts will continue, but the turmoil is faster than the efforts speed, and this will force our generations to transform our geographies faster, or find new geographies to settle by using technology, like moving to space, to other galaxies. But in all, the political thinking must be changed, and the human and the nature and the future generations must be the priority. Thank you for listening. Have a good time, have a good life, and be safe, be healthy. Bye-bye.